effort. And I have to say, one of the remarkable things about this project is completely funded by private philanthropy. There's no big government grant involved right now, and so what you have is a lot of community support trying to fund work that really reflects the urgency of getting after this problem of getting after the python and its impact on Florida's native wildlife. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ian, who's going to share with you some pretty incredible findings that we've come across. So, Ian.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Welcome. You're here in the Conservancy Snake Lab at the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and this is a safe spot to talk about science here. And we've had a very exciting research initiative for the last 5 years, as Rob mentioned. And as you can see, we have a lot of partners, a lot of collaborators that we work with. We do a lot of the heavy lifting here. We have an active radio telemetry tracking program. And over these 5 years, we've learned an awful lot about this invasive apex predator, the Burmese python. The Burmese python, this is one of the largest snakes on the planet. It is a constrictor snake, reaches incredible size, near 20 feet in length, couple hundred pounds, and you really need to see this animal to believe it in the wild here. It's an invasive animal. If you're not from South Florida and you're not new to this topic here, this animal is not supposed to be here. As you can see, they're from Southeast Asia, and they've made their way here to South Florida through the pet trade. Whether they were intentionally released or they escaped, they are here, and they have a wild population now, and they are wreaking havoc on our native wildlife. There seems to be a myth that Hurricane Andrew started this problem. Burmese pythons were well established in South Florida prior to Hurricane Andrew, and they are here to stay. This is why we're here today. We want to share with you an interesting observation from the field. This is a day in the life of the research project. The image you're seeing is from Cuyahoga Seminole State Park. We were working with our partners, our land managers there, and we were searching a zone, and we came across a Burmese python with a massive prey item inside. And this image here is at capture, and we're wondering what's in there. We're taking our best guess. What is inside that python? We had a couple short guesses there, and now you're going to see we moved this animal out of the wild to an open area, and it was stressed, and it promptly regurgitated this item. This is a deer, a white-tailed deer, native wildlife. But what's really interesting is the true scale of this. So take this in, digest this if you will. The animal is pushing, the python is pushing the animal out. You can imagine that this is the same way it would have gone in. That is not cut open. That's the actual skin at the mouth. That's how wide that animal had to get to swallow that prey item. Here's the breathing tube and the tongue. That animal's breathing while it's eating, and that animal's coming out. This was traumatic for everybody. Here's what it looked like when it came out of the python. You can see that the head of the deer is being digested. So that animal would have properly digested this fawn and assimilated it. This observation was recently accepted in the Journal of the Herpetological Review, and so this observation was peer-reviewed, and we do believe that it is the largest python to prey ratio yet documented. So as you can see, the python was 14.3 kilograms, 31.5 pounds. The white-tailed deer was larger in mass, 15.9 kilos and 35 pounds. That's 111% of the python's mass. I mean, you kind of have to see it to believe it, and there it is in the imagery. These are the photos that speak 1,000 words. And this is the evidence that we have that we're collecting as to the impact that this python is continuing to have across our greater Everglades ecosystem. Now, as much as the size is of interest, it's the impact that this animal's having across the food chain here. And so we actually have, this is not the python, but this is a euthanized snake, humanely euthanized. This is the exact mass of that Burmese python. And while this animal's out here, I want to introduce the team here. This is Kathy Worley, our science director. This is Ian Easterling, our field technician. Monica Hendricks, our conservation associate. So Ian, Monica, and myself, we've been out searching and tracking for these animals this breeding season, but we wanted to showcase the size. This is not a big Burmese python by any stretch. This is a female. She's the exact match. She's 11 feet and she's 31.5 pounds. So imagine that prey bulge that we saw in the field. This animal, it almost did not compute. That photo of us looking at it, we were sitting there just trying to process that an animal this size could get its head around what turned out to be a deer. And it's surreal to see that in the field. And we don't have too many observations of pythons with prey items here in Southwest Florida. That was definitely one for the books. But imagine them doing this, on their own time. A lot of slow deaths out there for our native wildlife. And if I can draw your attention back to the screen, this is important. This is a hypothetical diet necessary to attain 15 feet in size. A 15-foot python will be well over 100 pounds. This is a 31.5 pound python. So these items in the silhouette are things that we have found during necropsies inside pythons. From when they're smaller, eating rodents, then they graduate up to the rabbits, they get into our wading birds, they love possum, then they work their way up to the food chain, and you saw the imagery of them eating white-tailed deer. At this size, they're eating white-tailed deer. And so why is that important? So the size is interesting, great. We have the largest prey ratio on record documented. I'm sure that will be challenged over the years here in South Florida as they find more and more impact on these animals. But imagine through the system, removing white-tailed deer, getting those animals, that was a fawn. Imagine the recruitment of that animal, that they will not be able to reproduce, and white-tailed deer are the primary prey for our state and federally protected Florida panther. So we have an endangered cat, and the Burmese python is also eating their prey as well. Any of these animals that are affected in this chain here, this pyramid, hitting rabbits hard, they're prey items for many other creatures. So there's a cascading effect that's likely happening. We're not saying they're definitely depressing the white-tailed deer population, but as white-tailed deer are important for panthers, they're popular for sportsmen. This is evidence that you're seeing today. They call it Exhibit A, if you will, or Exhibit B. Last season, somebody reported from our colleagues at the U.S. Geological Survey of a large python that had the remains of 3 fawns in their digestive tract. So that's one python that had 3 deer inside. This is the size that they're capable of taking small white-tailed deer. And the impacts, I think we're going to learn more about this as the years progress. How are we getting at this information? We mentioned we have an active radio telemetry project. We surgically implant some of our pythons with transmitters, and then we follow them in the field. And this research and removal project has been very effective. It's allowing us to understand the behavior of this invasive apex predator. Here's a female being removed from her clutch of eggs. Actually, the eggs down here on this table are likely that clutch of eggs. Right now we're in the breeding season. It's March 1st, it's the tail end of the breeding season. This observation of the prey was in April. That's the time that those pythons they're done mating. If the female is not sitting on her eggs and protecting them for a couple months, they're very hungry. And the males and females get off those egg clutches or out of the mating areas, and they're predating on our native wildlife. And we've become very successful of locating these large breeding females during the breeding season. And we do that by radio tagging males and following them to the females. Here's a few seasons ago on this specific lab table here, and you can see the large volume of these animals. These are 16-foot, 15-foot class pythons. These are those animals that are over 100 pounds that would have been consuming that native wildlife. And so over the past few breeding seasons, we've become very effective. We've removed hundreds of breeding adults that have a combined weight over 10,000 pounds. 5 tons of native wildlife was removed from our snake team and our partners throughout Southwest Florida in a very small localized area. And we use those numbers, those pounds, it equates to the biomass of these animals. If we're removing 10,000 pounds of python, imagine what they ate in native wildlife. So I put this picture up here to remind me to talk about how important our native snakes are. We have 15 species of native snake in the state of Florida, and they all provide a tremendous service to our ecosystem. We need these snakes. They're beautiful creatures. The python is a beautiful creature. It just is here because we put it there. And it's invasive, but we have many native snakes in the state of Florida, and it's tremendously important to have that sort of understanding. We don't need to fear this animal. We just need the awareness and the understanding. And what you can do is you can get involved in looking for these invasive animals. You can download this app. It's a great app to have. Everybody has a smartphone nowadays. And you get familiar with your native wildlife. If it's this big and doesn't have a rattle on its tail, it's an invasive snake. It's easy as that. But when they're smaller, they can easily be confused with a native snake. So don't kill these animals on their first sight. If you're nearby in South Florida and you have one of these animals close to you, you can call the hotline number that the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission monitors. You can get involved in your local CISMA, your Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area,